Here we are, Vodcast Underground, another episode. What is this, episode 5?
11? I'm not sure.
I don't remember. We'll put it in the description when we upload it, but it's been a long time. It's been about a month.
I think you're right. It's 5.
Is it 5? Yeah, because we did two in a row. But yeah, it's been about a month since we've done one. Obviously, life has been busy. Maybe just a little bit busy for you. Nothing major on your end of the spectrum, right? Just a little. But yeah, glad to be back. I'm really excited for this newest one, the lists. We all, of course, being music, metal fans, record fans, lists are always a blast to kind of debate and go through. So this one here will be our top, after much deliberation, our top 20. We decided to go with 20, our top 20 hard rock and metal albums of the 1980s, 1980 to 1989. So, but Corey Johnson, back again. Thanks for co-hosting this with me. Always a blast.
So yeah, John, thanks for having me on again. It's Corey from Just Add Vinyl over at my YouTube channel. Previously, Corey's VC channel, and previously Overkill Vids. But November marks my eighth year, I think, in the vinyl community.
Wow, 8 years. That's incredible.
8 years making videos. Yep. I cannot guarantee that all the videos are still up. I mean, I even watch a video from myself from 2 years ago, and some of the stuff I just cringe at, but some of it's pretty cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Your first video is not up, because I went back, I don't know,
it's gone.
Probably a couple months ago to go try and find it again, because I've watched it before and I was like, oh, he took it off. You just look so young.
I know, it's crazy. I did save it, and I'll bring out clips, snippets from it from time to time when appropriate. But there's a few I did clean up, and I left some of the main ones up there. But yeah, it's just fun to be a part of the vinyl community. And now we're doing this thing, which is kind of different. Things are evolving more into like the podcast kind of thing. Yep. I really like I like your style. I like the way, you're the host, I'm the co-host. That's fine. But like Joe Rogan, I've been checking out some of those, a little bit late to the party there. But I like the way it's just two people, and you have more of a dynamic dialogue that way. You don't have that third person interrupt, I wouldn't say interrupting, but kind of changing the course of the conversation.
Yeah.
And also just turning the camera on and getting things raw and getting things more natural, I think, is important. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's kind of, necessarily say it was because of Joe Rogan. Of course, I watched his podcast off and on throughout the years, but that style, which is pretty common now, especially on YouTube, but well-known people are doing that. Like you said, the kind of one-on-one, you got two guys, there might be some producers and stuff, but one-on-one, and they just sit back and have a conversation. And that's kind of how those are the podcasts that I like to listen to, that style. And so that's kind of what I wanted this to be. And it also, Corey, I think it really lends itself to having other VC members or other guests come on. That's my hope too, is that somebody will take us up on our offer to guest, and I think the way that we do it, I think it lends itself to having guests like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, man, would you say 11 years? Is that right?
No. 8.
8 years. Sorry. 8 years. Yeah.
I started in 2011.
So I started in 2016 in November, actually, right after the Tom Petty box sets came out, his discography box sets. That's when those were my first 2 videos. So yeah, it was November. It's like mid-November. It's probably this week.
Yeah, it's crazy. Time flies.
I know. Yeah. I mean, you've done 10 times more videos. I think I can count my videos on 3 hands if I had them.
Two hands and a foot.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get into it. Do you want to just read the main list, and then we can go through our plus 5s, and then maybe talk about some of the records and why we picked them?
Sure. Let me. Well, first, I kind of wanted to start with my criteria. So we had to attack this in a certain way. And 1980 to 1989, of course, this is
golden era.
Yeah, the golden age of thrash, the golden age of metal. And it's, as everybody knows, it evolved from the 70s into the 80s and just exploded. But so picking the top 20 is hard. So what I did was
Very hard.
my criteria was first and foremost heavily weighted on impact, childhood into preteen, into formative years. I was born in 75. So you're talking, I am 5 years old, to 15 there. So, or 5 to 15. Yeah. And so if it has a little more significance to me if with a nostalgic, or if it was a discovery or something that was in my tape deck, or if I had the CD, that weighted a little bit heavier for me. And then that, of course, I think I ended up with a list of like 50 or so albums. And then as I started to weed them out, how you put one album, hold it up next to another album, and when it was more significant or just a better album or just like a perfect album, then I would start to drop off. So historical significance, a factor, but take second to nostalgia. But we whittled this down to about 20, and then we couldn't agree on 5. So we couldn't agree on 5 on the 20 to 25. So we ended up throwing in our own albums there. So what did you ask me to do? What do you want me to read through the list quickly, just so we can get it all out there right up front?
Yeah, let me, I'll give you my criteria as well, how I came up with my 50. And then I'll explain how we put together the master 20 list that we both decided on. So mine was the same, except I weighted influence and historical influence a little bit more than personal influence, just because it's all over the board. Some of these records are still some of my favorite records. Some of these records, like I was telling you off camera earlier, that I revisited that I hadn't listened to in a while. I was just like, wow, these are just not, I just didn't like them. It just wasn't the same. So, but I did try to add in, what was significant to me as I was, because we were kids, growing up, and then later in the 80s is when we got into junior high school. But kind of why it was important to me was definitely part of it. But I looked at the whole picture, and that's how I came up with my 50 is what was influential. And obviously we have hindsight, so we can go back and say, oh, I see where this band evolved out of this band or this record. So that's kind of how I did mine. And then what we did is we took our top 50. I looked at both of our lists. I think you had 40, I had 50. And then I took duplicates. Any records that we picked the same, that we had the same for each decade, each year, we broke it down by year. I put on the list, and we actually ended up having 19 out of the 50 that we each did, 19, which was crazy. And then we tried to do 25. I put 5 that I thought should be on there, and then you put 5, and then I think we ended up having a couple that were identical. So we just decided that 20 was good, and then we could throw in our own personal 5 to make 25. So I really liked that way. When you suggested that, I think that's absolutely the perfect way to do this, because we're never gonna we never would have gotten through this if we would have just
you're saying that in such a nice way, John, because what really happened, guys, when we got down past the 19, I threw out a couple. I started to say, well, let's switch a few around. Let's take this one and switch it. And then John stood up and kept the integrity of the 19 list. So, okay, so the integrity of the 19 stayed. And then I started to lobby for certain albums, and then I kind of relented. I was like, okay, let's go with this one and that one. And then I couldn't live with it. About an hour later, I'm texting you back like, no, forget it. Get that thing off the list. Yeah. And here's why. And will you put this in? And then finally we deliberated. We're like, look, you do your +5, I'll do my +5, and we'll go home. So,
no, that was the way to do it. But I'm good. I'm glad that we weren't just like, okay, because then it wouldn't be real, right? You were
right.
We lived with it, and you're right. Because I'm not even okay with it now, but It is what it is.
I think if we did it again, it would switch up a little bit, but I think we'd have still the same.
Yeah, I'd say 90% of it would be on here. There's at least 3 I would switch out, but that's neither here nor there. This is the 20. So why don't you go ahead, starting at 1980, and go down. This is our top 20 that Corey and I decided. We're not saying that this is 100% that this is set in stone top 20, because I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about? You forgot this and you forgot that. So please know that this isn't a definitive end all be all list. This was our top 20 when we put it together, and we combined lists. But believe me, we didn't forget any albums because they were all on here at one point. So
that's true. Okay, you want me to get started? All right, 1980, AC/DC, Back in Black, Motorhead, Ace of Spades, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. Nothing for 1981, correct?
Correct.
Because we ended up switching out the Maiden. All right, 1982, Scorpions, Blackout, Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. 1983, Def Leppard, Pyromania, Quiet Riot, Metal Health. Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. 1984, Metal Church's Self-Titled. 1985, Exodus, Bonded by Blood. 1986, Metallica's Master of Puppets. Megadeth, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? Slayer, Rain in Blood. 1987, Anthrax, Among the Living, and Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. 1988, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. I remember now. And also 1988, Death, Leprosy. 1989, Faith No More, The Real Thing, and King's X, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska. And finally, number 20 was Sepultura with Beneath the Remains.
Awesome. I can hear people in the VC right now before they've even seen this, but I can hear them as they're watching this in either tomorrow or later tonight, whenever we get this up. I can hear them right now just screaming at you reading that list. Like, what? That's terrible. This is insane.
You think? Well, I mean, I think there might be some people that are like, yeah. I mean,
oh, for sure. It's going to be both. Like 1980 for me. Of course, I've wanted to have Ozzy's, Blizzard of Oz in there, because I think that absolutely belongs next to Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, and Back in Black, Ace of Spades. But the three that we decided on, all three of those records still to this day are super influential and just phenomenal records. When I went back and revisited all of these records over the last week, and some of them I listened to a couple of times. And 1980 it wasn't like, can't listen to this anymore. It was just like, wow. Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell is a phenomenal metal record. It is phenomenal. It is, it's phenomenal. It is such an underrated record that nobody talks about outside of, real diehard metal or hard rock fans. But nobody in the mainstream talks about the Heaven and the Dio years of Heaven and Hell. And it's a shame because, yes, I get, Ozzy and Sabbath, that was the golden era, but this record stands up, in my opinion, right beside those. I mean, because it's a completely different record, but it's a phenomenal record. That's off this list. This is in my top 3 for sure. 1982, Scorpions, Blackout. That's a phenomenal record. I had not listened to that record in a long time. Of course, everybody knows the "No One Like You." I mean, that's a super famous song. But Blackout, phenomenal record. The Scorpions are a phenomenal band. They were super underrated, and I think they still are. Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. That's one that I go to often. I love that record from beginning to end. In fact, I wanted to show you this. I'm not sure if you have this or listen to some. My buddy, the rhythm guitar player in my band, he's a big record nut too, and he let me borrow this when I went by today to pick up.
Oh, nice
amp. But I didn't know that.
You can get that for a reasonable price too. The MoFi on that.
How did I miss this? I had no idea that MoFi did this record. It's like, what? Where was I?
Isn't it sub $30 too? I don't own a copy because I had a couple sealed copies. Sent one to Cloudy Milder, and then I kept the other one, and I didn't feel like I needed the MoFi, but I think they came out. They were like $29.99 or something.
Yeah, this came out in 2014, and this is the numbered edition because I don't think they're all numbered, right? Or are they? Actually, they are. MoFis are. I'm thinking of audio productions or analog productions. But anyways, I haven't listened to this yet, but I'm really excited to hear the difference, because I do have a couple originals, and my original that I go to now was also sealed at one time. And so that's kind of been my go-to, and it sounds great. It's a great record. I think it holds up production wise to today, whereas a lot of some of these records on here don't necessarily. But okay, 1983, Def Leppard, Pyromania. I mean, I love that record. I had not listened to it in a while, but I listened to it again, and it just reaffirmed why I love that record so much. Not only is it just well, what's the word I'm looking for? Just full of riffs, like riff after riff. But man, talk about
riffomania.
Yeah, talk about hooks. I mean, hard rock / heavy metal hooks, right? Those are hard to do and still seem heavy or rocking, in my opinion. And Def Leppard does that.
For us with the Def Leppard too, it was back and forth with High and Dry and Pyro. I mean, High and Dry is right up there for me. I even tried to make a case to get High and Dry, but I'm good with Pyro and like AC/DC Back in Black. I feel when we were making this list, and I want to try and catch up with you, so we got a little more volley. But when I was making this list, we had an opportunity to. I'm gonna get my hand out of the camera there. It looks crazy in there. Whoa. We had a total opportunity to like make the coolest hardcore list ever, and have it full of Candlemass and Celtic Frost and
I wanted to do that.
Albums,
the stuff that we listen to now.
Right. And then, looking back, or you take 2019 and you go back and look in the 80s. I mean, we could have stacked this list that way, but I had to be honest with myself.
That would have been disingenuous.
I wanted to have a genuine list of stuff that I had on my Walkman and on the headphones and the CD players and stuff. So, but yeah, Back in Black. I mean, was it Mutt Lange?
Yep.
That produced that. I mean, just a huge space. AC/DC coming back after the loss of Bon Scott, but not missing a beat with Brian Johnson. I mean, it's an incredible album. Motorhead, Ace of Spades, just a monster of an album. I mean, if when you listen to it, it feels like 15 minutes.
It really does. It like goes by like that. And
drumming is insane. Yeah. The I have the bronze. I can't remember if it's the U.S. press. I think but it sounds incredible.
You have the UK press, because the US press is the sky, the buildings.
That's the one I have for Ace of Spades. I have the UK press on either Overkill or the other one. I get the two. I forget which ones, but I recently got to listen to Ace of Spades, and it didn't disappoint. I was really happy to make sure it was on this list, even though you think of Motorhead maybe more of the 70s. Going through this list, I wanted to make sure there was a representative of all the main bands. So if there was one Metallica album, I tried to narrow it down to just one instead of taking the list up.
Yeah.
And
you called me on that. I tried to push for multiple albums from one band, but after being honest about it, I think you did well. Basically beating me up and telling me that you would kill my firstborn if I tried to put another Metallica album on the list.
Well, right. It'd just be all Metallica and Iron Maiden
and Slayer.
Or Priest. Right. But like Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, possibly their best album, and Ozzy's not on the album. And that's just crazy. And I quote my friend Greeno on that. But Heaven and Hell, just, oh my gosh, it's insane. But at least we get Dio on there. We do get Sabbath.
Yep.
But and then what hurts though is we didn't have Blizzard of Oz, and that's what hurts me the most, not having a solo Ozzy there with Randy Rhoads. But that's on my +5. Scorpions Blackout, Perfect 10 album. Wanted to make sure I get Scorps in there because Scorps was such integral part of my playlist through the 80s. Had to get Scorps, so we went with the Blackout.
I agree, man. Blackout is such a phenomenal. I really enjoyed that listen. That was one of the ones I threw on twice just because I hadn't listened to it in a while, and I forgot how great of a record it is and how good of a band they are. I haven't played it in a long time.
Play it, man.
After we hang up, play it tonight.
Sorry that I didn't do that.
No worries.
But then Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. It was either that or Defenders, and you got to go with Screaming, or either that or British Steel. But went with Screaming for Vengeance. Just a killer album front to back. And then I'll hand it back to you to make some comments on Quiet Riot, Mental Health, and then I've got a couple comments about that album before we move past it, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll. So yeah, in '83, we just talked about Pyromania. Loved it. Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. That's my favorite Maiden record. Honestly, I think it's very similar to A Number of the Beast, but better, in my opinion. I don't think it's as influential as Number of the Beast, just because, that was basically the introduction of Dickinson and Maiden as a real force in metal, with Number of the Beast. So, we kind of went back and forth on, should we include Number of the Beast or Peace of Mind? But then we went with our hearts. You know what? I like Peace of Mind better. I think it's a better record from front to back. And so that's why we put it on there. And it still sounds great. It just sounds awesome. I listened to that one actually this morning. And then Quiet Riot, Mental Health. I still have my original copy from when I was a kid, which was part of the reason I put it on there. Yeah. It's part of the reason I put it on there. The other part was that's the very first heavy metal album to go number 1 on the Billboard charts. So that was the other reason. And then I listened to it last night, and it was, I got to tell you, man, and this is my personal opinion for all of you viewers out there, but I think it's a terrible record. Outside of the first 2 tracks, and really, I mean, I don't ever need to hear Come On Feel the Noise again, just because it's overplayed. Yeah. But Mental Health is a great song, opens the record. But honestly, it was tough for me to get through that whole record. I thought the songs were kind of weak, kind of cheesy. The drums, the production was super cheesy, in my opinion. The guitar work was just average for that period of time. I mean, I understand why it is a significant record because of, kind of what it did. It helped bring, along with a couple of other bands like, Wasp and Motley Crue, helped kind of bring the Sunset Strip into the mainstream. But for me, that's one of the ones that I would absolutely take off this list, just because I thought it was terrible. So I don't think it's a top 50 album, but that's my personal opinion.
I get your perspective. I really get your perspective. And it was so tempting to want to push that off for another album, but my heartstrings won out on this one. So I felt like it was really important.
I did the same thing, man.
I mean, I must have been 7 or 8 years old, over at a friend's house. And I remember seeing that cassette cover.
I was 7 years old.
And then
scary.
Our next door neighbor played the 45 for Come On Feel the Noise.
Yeah.
Either that or Slick Black Cadillac. Played the 45 on a little crappy record player. It had it really loud, but I can hear it from my window. And I was like, what is that noise?
Yeah. And he sings like that the entire record. Like that's
Kevin
his
DeBro.
voice.
I mean, just what a voice, and rest in peace. The metal world lost a big one with him. But you're right. What you're right about is Quiet Riot tried to be like a Van Halen and then just didn't pull it off. Randy Rhoads,
because he left,
started the band, and then Randy Rhoads wasn't there any longer. And I don't even remember the guitar player's name.
Carlos Cavazo.
Thank you, Cavazo. And
he's great.
He did a great job with Battle Axe. I love that solo, but I haven't played this album since I think it was late last year. But I had a blast listening to it. You dropped the needle on it.
To this one, to Mental Health.
Mental Health, yeah. I know all the songs like the back of my hand, all the way from Slick Black Cadillac to.
I do too.
Oh gosh, I haven't even looked at the back of the album for a long time. But
their faces.
even the ballad that ends what's the shoot? I can't even remember the songs right now. Do you have them in front of you?
Yeah, hang on. I'm gonna get it right now. So yeah, side 1, of course, Mental Health, Come On Feel the Noise, Don't Want to Let You Go, Slick Black Cadillac, Love's a Bitch, Breathless, Run for Cover, Battle Axe, Let's Get Crazy, and Thunderbird.
I like Run for Cover's really good. Back. Love's a Bitch, that's a great one. Don't Want to Let You Go. I like all of those. And Thunderbird, what a killer ballad. Of course, it was a toast to Randy Rhoads.
Hold on.
But does the album hold up? Does the album hold up today? No.
Yeah, I don't think that it does.
But I think it's just an important part because it was Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It, and that was some of the first metal that I remember and opened the genre up for me.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? 1983. Kill 'Em All came out that year. Balls to the Accepts Balls to the
that was on my
Wall.
50
That
list.
album's killer. I listened to that one too. That album's killer. I mean,
I'm looking over here
so
because I
many.
think I have the 45 for that.
Defenders
Within
of the
Reach.
Faith, Judas Priest came out that year in 84. Of course, Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry, Dawkins, Tooth and Nail, which I think is a better record than Metal Health. Power Slave came out in 1984 from Maiden.
Yes.
So I think now Overkill's You'll Feel the Fire didn't come out till 85. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, hold on. We're in 83 with Metal Health.
Oh, what am I thinking? Sorry. Yep, we're in 83. Shut up,
still,
John.
I mean, you could pick any, and it was painful. Not
Shout at the Devil.
Those,
was that in 83? Dio's Holy Diver was in 83.
Every single one of those was on my top 40 list. And it was really hard. But like I said, I was running around my room listening to this. I didn't have any idea what Kill 'Em All was. That didn't reach the suburban neighborhood I was at in the Midwest till much later.
Yeah, I think we were a little too young, right? Because if we would have been like in high school, like 16 or 17, we probably would have been rocking to
totally different. And then we could spend a whole hour just talking about that and the age group and the music that we were introduced and influenced us. Being a certain age in the 80s makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, huge
between
difference.
What you like.
Agreed.
All right, what else we got?
So 1984, that was the last of 83. So 1984, we got Metal Church, self-titled album. I had not heard that record in a while, and I put it on, blistering, just phenomenal. Just, again, reaffirmed why I love Metal Church. It's such a great band. It's heavy. It's got killer hooks, killer riffs, and the singing, the vocals are great. I know some people don't like those clean kind of operatic style of vocals. I think it fits Metal Church's music perfectly, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of power metal meets thrash. Phenomenal record. And then 1985, Exodus Bonded by Blood. I just finished up listening to that before we started this. Phenomenal record. It's such a heavy record too. Obviously, I was not listening to Exodus in 1985, and I'm sure you probably weren't either. But
I wasn't.
When I first heard this album, at one time, this was my favorite thrash record because this is a game changer, and it's too bad that Exodus had so many problems getting this record made because this should have come out in 83 with Kill 'Em All. I mean, these guys were right there with Metallica, but just, inner band turmoil and poor management kind of set them back, unfortunately.
Yeah, like if you listen to the vocals on it, was it Paul Bailoff? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I know Bailoff. He's well respected in the thrash. And then reading some of the books and stuff on Thrash's past year, seeing how he used to run around, he'd see somebody with a Motley Crue T-shirt on, and he'd come over there, beat him up, and call them posers. He was like anti-poser, metal only,
And he was a huge dude
only.
too. Like he was like, what's his name size from Testament? Chuck Billy, like big dude.
So you didn't mess with him, but
no.
I do like his vocals.
Me too.
That's the album. It seems like it's thrash. It's definitely thrash metal, but just like Megadeth, it doesn't have a lot of like pure thrash moments on it. But what a killer album, and just nonstop riffage. I don't think there's if you listen to it, it sounds like something like maybe in between a Kill 'Em All and a Ride the Lightning.
Yeah,
you've got that echoey kind of
agreed
vocals to it.
Yep, lots of reverb.
Without the longer songs that you get on Ride the Lightning, so you kind of wonder maybe they were a little bit ahead of Metallica.
Some people think that they were at that time, but they didn't release a record, unfortunately, until 85. So that one hurt. That's insane.
And then the album artwork is like, what is going on with that album art? Have you ever? And I know there's a another album that like it was more of a censored sleeve, but I've never seen that. I've only ever seen like the two attached babies.
Yeah, I never saw
People
the
still
censored
talk
one.
about that. People don't even know who Exodus is. They're like, oh yeah, that's the one album with the two attached babies.
With the devil baby and then the normal baby. Yeah.
With some
Oh, it's a
stupid
classic
looks.
album cover.
Classic.
It's classic. Yeah. When I was listening to it, Kat came in, my wife, and she looked at it and she's like, "What is that?" I was like trying to explain it to her. She's like, okay, whatever."
Like you're trying to explain it, and you look back and gone.
Yeah, pretty much. So 1986, I think this is probably most people could guess this. Metallica's Master of Puppets, Megadeth's Peace Sells, Slayer's Reign in Blood. All three of those records are game-changing records. And I mentioned that when I first heard Bonded by Blood, that was my favorite metal album. And then I heard Slayer's Reign in Blood, and that very quickly became my favorite thrash metal album. First time I heard Slayer was like 89, and it was actually Hell Awaits. And I thought it was okay. I thought it was a little, even at that time, I was like, oh, Satan, ooh, I thought it was kind of hokey a little bit. There's some killer songs on that, but then I heard Rain and Blood. The first time I heard it, I was like, what did I just hear?
Just happened?
I feel like I was just got like punched back and forth. It's like so like it's like right there in your face, and just for like 20 minutes, and then it's done. Right? It's crazy. And then of course, we've all read the in the metal magazines and the books about Rick Rubin and Kerry King talking about how, and even Tom Maria talking about how they didn't realize how short it was until they were in the post-production room, and they looked at the time and they're like 28 minutes or whatever it was. Are you sure that, do we need to put another song on there? Like, no. Like, really? That seems kind of short. But it worked. It's crazy. 28-minute long metal record that actually worked. So and then, of course, Peace Sells, Master of Puppets, enough said there. Was Master of Puppets was the first Metallica record you got into, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and I don't want to just blow by it because everybody knows about it. I think I probably heard it probably late 86. I think it was the beginning of the school year, in late 86 when my buddy Kenny said, I was all about Motley Crue and Quiet Riot and all this, and, kind of had that bravado going on, like I'm kind of a badass because that's what I listen to. And he came up to the lunch table and he laid the puppets down in front of me. He says, "That's not heavy metal. This is heavy metal." Of course, he wasn't aware of we weren't aware of Kill 'Em All yet, but took Master of Puppets home. Didn't know what I was hearing. Second, third time, I was on the phone to my friends, holding the phone up to the boombox.
Yeah, I always remember doing that.
It became a huge Metallica fan. And then with Slayer, like you, I didn't hear Slayer. I think I kind of avoided it. I think my friend like tried to scratch it in his arm with like a pen or something at school. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "It's Slayer." It's probably the same. It's probably the same friend again. But Slayer scared the crap out. I thought Motley Crue and the pentagrams and stuff, that was very hokey and definitely for theater. No pun intended. But Slayer, Slayer's the be all end all when it comes to thrash metal.
Oh yeah.
And the albums and music, it just obliterates anybody that listens to it. And when I saw the big three live, I saw Anthrax, Metallica and Slayer, and I knew why Slayer closed, because after Slayer performed, there was nothing left.
Yeah, there's no way you could go on after that, man.
The wall of sound, the Marshall amps. It's sad to see him go this year. It really is sad to see Slayer actually retire. But what a run, and you just can't keep that up. We were talking about that. Like, I know Lombardo is not in Slayer anymore, but how can you drum like that with that kind of speed for so long and then still? I mean, we're going to get older, so I think if Slayer truly does retire, which I feel like it is, I don't feel like this is a stunt. I think they are going to retire on a high note. And look at the massive albums that they sell and the massive turnouts they get at their concerts.
Oh yeah,
and they don't have any radio hits or anything like that. So
they've made like a couple of videos, but no radio hits. No, I mean, it's insane.
Never sold out, whatever that means, but never really sold out to radio and different things like that. So they always kind of stay true to themselves. They got a little bit repetitive with their album releases, and of course you can critique and criticize them. But in the '80s, Slayer, I think their best albums in '90, but Rain and Blood definitely deserves a spot here.
Nothing really left to say. No, you said it all. Yeah, Slayer. I'm glad that I got to see Slayer a bunch of times, both from the pit, which was insane, and then older, sitting up on the balcony with my arms folded. But I mean, just phenomenal band. They love their fans, and that's one of the coolest things about, I think, in heavy metal in general. They're these bands, and thrash in particular, they're never bigger than us, right? They know the reason that they're successful is because of us and the fans, because of our insane love, infatuation with this music. And Slayer is one of those bands that they've never forgotten where they came from, no matter how big they get. So, all right, 1987. This was a tough year for me. I feel like there was a ton of good records in 1987, but we went with Anthrax, Among the Living, Guns N' Roses, Appetite. For me, the reason Appetite for Destruction is one of those records that I don't need to listen to all that often, just because I've listened to it so much. It's still a great record. I still like the record. But again, this was one of the ones that I got this record when it came out. Maybe not the day it came out, but that year, after seeing the video for Sweet Child of Mine, I mean, this was in my tape deck nonstop. I took this tape with me everywhere. You couldn't even read the label on the front of the tape.
I forgot about
rubbed
that.
off.
Yeah.
So that's why I included this, and this was a game changer record. Obviously, much has been written and stated about Appetite and kind of what it did to the Sunset Strip. I've heard people talk about that scene as there's pre-Guns N' Roses and post-Guns, pre-Guns and post-Guns, right? That's kind of when that music got a little more serious, got a little more balls, maybe, for lack of a better term. And then of course Among the Living, that still to this day, believe it or not, is my favorite Anthrax record. Edges out their 91 record. Why am I drawing a blank? What's the name of their 91 record? I'm totally drawing a blank.
You think the one that came after that, with Black Lodge and all that on it, White Noise?
No, one before.
There's one in between there, isn't there?
Yeah, they did the Joe Jackson cover. Persistence of Time.
Oh, Persistence. How can I forget that? I love Persistence of Time.
Love Persistence. Sorry, that was 1990. But yeah, that was that Among the Living just edges out Persistence of Time. For me, it's my favorite Anthrax record. So, but a killer record, and that record stands up today, to this day. A lot of these records may not when compared with some modern metal, right? But Anthrax Among the Living absolutely does. The drumming, Charlie Benante's drumming is just phenomenal. I mean, he is a phenomenal drummer. I think he's super underrated. Everybody talks about Lombardo, but I think you got to put Charlie up there with him. I mean, he's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal record.
And then nothing bigger in the 80s when you talk about movies and things and books is Stephen King. And then with Scott Ian's love for Stephen King and tying that into the theme with Among the Living.
Yep.
And then the artwork by Don, I always forget his last name, but that really awesome album artwork, which this guy Don, I forget his last name. He also did a lot of other artwork that on our popular albums or albums that we like, but incredible Anthrax album. And then GNR, I won't talk a lot about that. Just because, again, like Quiet Riot, Metal Health, there's a lot of other cooler picks we could throw in there. But I mean, at that time, that was it. I mean, Axl jumping around in his white denim
with his Axl slide, with his
dominated the radio, and then the grittier, sleazier tracks on there like Night Train and Rocket Queen, and I just know that album forward and backwards, and I usually give it a spin maybe once a year or so.
Yeah, that's about me as well.
You know, you like Welcome to the Jungle, and it came out at the time with the Clint Eastwood movie, Deadpool. That just came to me out of nowhere. But just that whole time is all together. I remember mowing the grass with headphones on, but that thing just cranked up. So yeah, it's just more of a heartstrings pick there with GNR, even though they weren't huge in the US. I don't know how big they were in Europe or outside of the US, but of course they were ours until the whole thing fell apart.
Right. Something that good just couldn't last. It's too bad. But yeah.
What about now? What do you think? Would you go see GNR now? I mean,
probably not. I mean, I've obviously heard and watched videos of them live, and they still sound fine. But yeah, just for me, that's not a band that I need to see. I saw them in '91 in the Use Your Illusion.
Oh, you're so
tour.
lucky.
I saw them.
I've never seen them live.
Yeah, when Metallica was touring the Black Album, and it was phenomenal. Even though Axl was in full prima donna mode at that time. Yeah, I don't think I would. I don't think I would pay money because tickets are not cheap to go see Guns N' Roses, and I don't think I'd pay $100 to see him. But that's just my personal opinion.
No, and it's what Axl's voice sounds like. It's just the footage and stuff I watch on YouTube. The voice just isn't there. It was barely there in the '90s, and I just don't know if I.
It's not
I love
bad,
Slash,
but it's not.
I'd probably go see Slash and Miles Kennedy before I go.
Yeah,
see GNR.
Honestly, I agree. Good point. Yeah, I probably would too, man. Miles Kennedy's a killer. But yeah.
All right, look what let's see. Look at '88, man. We got some heavy hitters on this list.
Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime, Death, Leprosy. Operation Mindcrime for me. By 1988, I was fully versed and immersed in metal at that point. Pretty much every kind of metal, save underground probably, but the mainstream thrash, and of course all of the mainstream metal bands at that time. And then Operation Mindcrime. I remember my neighbor had that record, and he was just go on and on about it all the time, about just how it's just a game changer. And he was a big Rush fan, and he was saying, it's like metal meets Rush, and going on and on about it. So finally I bought the tape, and again, that's another one of those tapes that just didn't leave my tape player. And then you had the videos right on MTV to go along with that record. So you got to see what they look like. And yeah, I absolutely love that record still to this day, and I think it holds up well. And I personally think it's by far their best record of the Jeff Tate era. But yeah, it's phenomenal record. And then Death, Leprosy. So we both had this on here. I didn't get into Death until the 90s, until probably like 93 or 94. But that was the first Death record that I heard. And for me, Death stood apart from the other Tampa, Florida death metal bands like Deicide and Autopsy and I guess Cannibal Corpse. Even though they're from Buffalo, they came down there to record more sound. For me, there's something different about Chuck, Evil Chuck, and Death. Their music there's a little bit more to it, a little bit more substance to it than just gore type of stuff or Satan. I mean, there wasn't any of that really. I mean, I felt like with Death, Leprosy too, he's talking about like real life stuff that happens, like terrible things that happen. He's talking about real life horrors, not gimmicky, cartoonish type horror type stuff, which some death metal in my opinion can be. Death just was completely different. So obviously I wasn't listening to that in 1988, but I was a few years later. And that Death, Leprosy, and probably Sounds of Perseverance are probably my two favorite Death records, but I think all their records are good. But I mean, Leprosy is what an amazing record. A death metal record with dirty vocals, with growled vocals, and you can still hear the lyrics. You can still hear him singing the lyrics, right? You can still make out the lyrics, but it's still super.
It helps to read along the first time, but yeah, you can still hear what he's saying.
Yeah. So
that was incredible. I didn't discover them until more recently. So I had seen the logo quite a bit in the '80s, late '80s and '90s, but they really weren't on my radar, and I felt like it was probably too extreme. But over the I only had started listening to him over the last 5 years, so I'm way late to the party. But the outstanding composition, the outstanding musicianship
It's
from
unbelievable.
members, switching out a few here and there, but he just always had a vision. Chuck always had that
Yep.
vision and was always challenged, always had a vision for that sound. And
He wasn't just trying to shock people, right? Like a lot of those bands, like let's just
right.
play super fast and super heavy and let's just shock people, which is fine because that's what they want to do. Yeah, you're right. He had a vision for that music and death and where he wanted to take it, and it was evident from
Absolutely.
this record on.
And I love the documentary. Is fantastic. If anybody gets a chance to watch that, I really love the way they only have a few pictures and very little video to go from, but the editing and what they do with the pictures to keep the narrative going and keep the story interesting is fantastic.
Yep.
But just when you think you exhausted a whole decade worth of metal, I started to listen more to death, and I was like, Discovery is like one of my favorite, more recent discoveries.
Don't you love that when you discover something you might have known they were there, but you didn't really give it,
love it because it's
time,
few and far between.
Yeah, you're right, especially for us.
Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. This is CD player time for me. I had bought my buddy's used CD player.
Still didn't have a CD player.
I think it was like $500 or something like that, and I had bought it for like 200 or something. It was an old Pioneer. It was a Pioneer.
Do you still have it?
Oh no, it finally
did.
died. It stopped turning on, and then it was in my second apartment. It was one of the things I left behind in my apartment days. But my buddy Adam got the CD, and he was all about it, just like you said, your friend. And I picked up the CD, and it was incredible. It was like a big thing in the '80s was R-rated action movies.
Yeah.
And I spent most of the '80s there renting VHS tapes from, before there was Blockbuster, but whatever the version of Blockbuster, we had like a West Coast Video or Family Video, whatever.
Ours was the grocery store.
Grocery store. Yeah. We would rent VHS, Van Damme. Steven
all
Seagal,
that stuff.
All those kind of movies. And then to me, when I started listening to Queensryche, it was like, hey, this is an action film and music.
Yeah,
so it was really cool.
You're right.
That concept thing. And then I didn't know what a concept album was, but I loved how the whole story was there and it was all tied together. And it just, it's an incredible album. Getting back into vinyl, I'd never heard it on vinyl. Picked up original of that, and I think I was playing it outside when I had my fire pit. Was pumping it out the speakers outside and just listening to it again for the first time in a long time. Just still had a really cool impact. So you're right, it does hold up. Love that album.
Yeah, I remember once I figured out that it was you're right, like a rock opera type of an album. I mean, it tells a story, right? It's prog. I remember trying to get my dad to listen to it because he liked, that kind of stuff, like prog, like Yes and early Genesis and all that stuff from, the late 60s, early 70s. So I was like, Daddy, you got to hear this. And he couldn't do it, right? Because it was just probably too heavy for him. But I remember like trying forever just to explain the songs to him. See, look how this song goes into this song, and this is what they're talking about, and like, government takeover, and he was just
Dr. X.
Yeah, he's just like, sorry, son, it's not for me. But I tried. But yeah, phenomenal. All right, we got three more of 1989. Faith No More, The Real Thing, King's X, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, and Sepultura, Beneath the Remains. Faith No More, Real Thing. I didn't get this record in 89, but I was well aware of them. I think I probably picked it up 90 or 91. Always been a big Faith No More fan. They are one of those bands. There's not very many of them, but I feel like Faith No More is one of those unique bands that only a handful of those bands show up, once in a generation, where they can mix multiple styles, not just one or two, but heavy music, funk, hip hop type stuff, and they mix it all, and it comes out as that, and it works, right? Because some of that stuff just doesn't work. It's just kind of hokey. But with Faith No More, it worked, and it's worked their entire career. And each one of their albums are different, but they still keep that thing that makes them that's Faith No More. I mean, you know Faith No More when you hear them. You could hear a brand new song today without knowing who the band was, and you would know it was Faith No More the moment you heard the music. So yeah, I mean, phenomenal record. What a way to debut a new singer too, right? Because they had just parted with their Chuck Mosley, their previous singer.
Yeah, I think he just passed away last year, dude.
Yeah, you're right. And then you bring in a guy like Mike Patton, who came from Mr. Bungle, who was already an established singer with another band, and then they kind of didn't miss a beat. They just kept on going, and they sound different, obviously, but they still have that funk thing going. And I've always liked funk music. I think funk music is overlooked and gets kind of a bad name because it can be cheesy at times, especially with white dudes playing funk.
Right. Yeah. And funk and metal. I mean, if it's done right, you get a little bit like Suicidal Tendencies, a little bit. But yeah, a lot of people look down their nose at that. But Faith No More pulled it off. Huge Faith No More fan. I discovered them when walking into my friend of a friend's Chad's room. He had a room in the basement, and he was allowed to spray paint graffiti in it. So, and then he had a tape deck on there, and he was just cranking the song, and it was falling to pieces. And he was just kind of getting into it. And he's doing this air bass guitar,
Killer.
That ding.
Yeah. What a killer song!
And I was
for
like,
you
what's
to hear.
going on? And he made a dub. He made a dub of the tape for me, and I just loved the band from then on out. I mean, every track is great on there. It's a lot of, but Falling to Pieces, and of course, Epic was on. And it still seemed like it was a while until Epic was finally on MTV. But Epic, but what took away a little bit later from the album was I realized that Mike Patton had nothing to do with writing it. He had to be willing to step in and sing it, and he just nailed it. So Angel Dust really is
made
the
it his
album
own.
For me. King for a Day. That's a kill. The reissue of that has some extra tracks on it that are phenomenal. But Mike Patton, so talented. I shouldn't have been surprised.
He's crazy. He's crazy, but he's talented.
Yeah. But like some of the geniuses are the ones that teeter on that. But Real Thing is a killer album. And all right, let's shift gears. What are your thoughts on Gretchen Goes to Nebraska? We both had that on our list. I thought that was kind of crazy how that one popped. I can see, AC/DC Back in Black, Screaming from Vengeance. Yeah, I can see how two people can make a list. But how did you get a list that has Gretchen, and so did I?
Crazy. I mean, we left off a bunch of bands that released killer records that year too. For me, King's X kind of, and I don't know if I necessarily consider them a metal band. I mean, I think they have metal elements. They're definitely more of a hard rock band for me. But for me, and I didn't get into King's X until, was it Dogma was the first King's X record that I heard?
Well, you sure it wasn't earlier than that with Faith, Hope, Love?
You know what? It probably was Faith, Hope, Love. Whatever record
Love.
came out in
Love
91.
was on the radio and on MTV.
Yeah. That was their 91 record, right? Faith, Hope, Love.
And then Dogma was after that.
That was like 94, 95. Yeah, You're right. Anyways, yeah. So to include a kind of, I guess you could call obscure band like King's X to at least to mainstream people. Yeah, I was shocked when I saw your list. But then I was excited because I knew it was going to go on mine. So I was like, yes, we're going to get this record in there. Phenomenal record. King's X is a super underrated band. And I know I've heard probably 100 people say this over the past 2 years, but how did they not become huge? I don't understand how they, especially.
It's one of the big mysteries of rock and metal from the 80s.
I just don't understand, like bad management, or maybe they stayed with Megaforce too long. I mean, I don't understand how they did not get bigger, because they had everything. They had the songs, they had the musicianship, they had the hooks, they had the riffs, they were heavy. I don't know. So baffles me.
Maybe a little bit before their time, for sure.
I think that
probably before their time. I don't know if they had some, maybe people didn't get them. They have a lot of harmonies.
Yeah.
Like heavy metal Beatles almost.
Yeah, you're right. They
But I
did.
mean,
They
Gretchen
brought
was a
a
concept album right there, a year after Mindcrime. So, so I don't think people knew what to do with King's X exactly. Like King's X, and I think, like, not to compare them with Fate's Warning, but Fate's Warning is a similar band that was highly talented.
Yep.
That comes on the scene that has a different sound, but they don't really get the recognition. And then like Dream Theater sneaks in there and
gets all the recognition, right?
and just blows up with one album. But then after that, they kind of taper down. I've never really met anybody who said that. Was it Metal T? Said something like, I never heard anybody come up and say, I'm a huge Dream Theater fan. So I've never met a lot of passionate.
I have.
You have? Or not. Okay, I haven't.
I still know a guy, a buddy of mine, he's a prog nerd, but Dream Theater is his favorite band, and that's all he wants to talk about when we get together to hang out. So yeah, at least he likes metal. So
if you guys haven't heard Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, highly recommend.
Highly recommended.
Giving that a play.
And then the last one here, Sepultura, Beneath the Remains. This is for sure, for me, this is the kind of the first half of Sepultura's career from the 80s to the end of the 80s, mid 80s to the end of the 80s. This is their best record from that first kind of thrashy part of almost death metal-y part of Sepultura, in my opinion. This is by far, I think, their best record. It's the best musicianship. When they started off, they weren't necessarily the best musicians. They weren't a super tight band. If you've heard that first record, especially, it's kind of all over the place.
It's really raw. It's really fast, but just poor production and just everything is just a big mush. Mess.
Yeah. Whereas with this record, it's not. This really established them, in my opinion, as a serious force in the extreme metal world. And this is my favorite album of the first half of their career is Beneath the Remains. I don't even remember the first time I heard this record. The first Sepultura album I heard was Chaos AD, of course, and I got that record in '93 when it came out. But I was probably right around that time when I heard.
That's funny. That's the same as me. Somebody had a tape at a party about '93, and it was Chaos, and I just loved it. It was awesome. Phenomenal. And I was just like, what am I hearing right now? I'm a metalhead. I like metal. What is this?
Yeah.
Like, Sepul, what? And it was still melodic, but it had the riffs and great vocals. I mean, I don't know, just and it was fresh. Yeah. And it was different, and it was awesome.
And this record holds up too. Some of the heavy, kind of more heavier thrash and even early death metal stuff from '89 sounds dated. It really does, where I don't feel that this record does. This record holds up, in my opinion. Do you have an original of this, of no. Beneath the Remains? You don't?
I have the box set for Roadrunner years. That way I knocked out all the first 5 albums.
I have, which one?
Some of them sound better than others, but it's a really cool box set. That way I just ended up buying. As I was watching Sepultura on Discogs and trying to pick those up on vinyl, I just ended up popping on the box set.
Yeah, I have the Roadrunner Cargo Records reissue. This is the red vinyl. This came out in '97.
That's probably got some value to it. I'm not familiar with that pressing.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's, $80, $90 or something like that, if I remember. Sounds great. I've not heard an original, but I imagine it's pretty similar. But
I think it was Chaos AD that had it had struggled with the mastering on that one. Sounded
you're talking about
CD,
the dual,
the vinyl
that came out, the one that just came out like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, even the box set one I think sounds pretty bad, but no, the remaster, I bought that. We're talking an awful lot about Chaos here.
Hurry up, 90s. We got to get to the 90s.
Yeah, bring the 90s on. Yeah, the 90s the remaster sounds excellent, but the one in the box set sounds a little flatter and stuff. But anyway,
yeah, I've not heard that one. But
so I've got to go here in a minute.
Yeah, let's do our +5 real quick. You go first.
Yeah, my +5 was criminally left off of the top 20. Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, and I can interswap Diary. in and out of those, either one. But Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. I felt like the top 20 list in the 80s should have Motley Crue. I noticed in the media and things like that, they're getting butchered. There's no respect for them anymore. It's really strange. Do they bring it on themselves? I don't know.
It's because we're in a super hypersensitive era, and they're not a PC band. They never were.
But you're talking about Too Fast for Love, and the first time I heard them was Theater of Pain. And of course, my relationship with Motley Crue ended after Dr. Feelgood. So I even liked Dr. Feelgood, but now going back, that album to me is really bad.
Dr. Feelgood?
Dr. Feelgood's pretty bad. Great production, of course. But you could tell that they were, I don't know, it's just too polished. But I love Dr. Feelgood when it came out. And then there was Decade of Decadence, but if you go back to 86, I mean, Theater of Pain, I loved all those albums. Motley Crue was a big part of my 80s, so I had to get Motley Crue in there. Another miss for me that I can't stand, that's not on the top 20 list, is there's no Van Halen album. You had Fair Warning, which I did. I had Fair Warning too, but I ended up replacing it with 1984 because Jump was such a big part. But Eddie Van Halen. But I think if we did the 70s, of course, their debut album would be right there.
No question, yeah.
The discovery of Eddie Van Halen and Van Halen's first album for me was incredible. But for the 80s, it was all about 1984. And then Dokken, you see here behind me, Dokken back for the Attack. I mean, their first 3 albums are incredible.
Underrated
this
band. One
is a little heavier, so I went with it. But I felt like I had to get George Lynch in there with Dokken, melodic, great riffs, perfect guitar solos, just amazing.
Don Dokken's a great vocalist, great front man. They're underrated. I like Dokken.
I mean, if you talk about the 80s for me, it was Ozzy, Dokken, Def Leppard, Van Halen, Motley Crue. That took up that's
all of us.
And then finally, my last pick, and I recently spun there. I bought an original sealed some years ago and opened it a long time ago. But for me, 1989, The Cult with Sonic Temple.
Great choice.
Ian Astbury with his vocals, great band, a little more, have a lot of respect in the gothic genre with their previous albums, a little bit more. I think Bob Rock got his hands on this one, and he got his hands on the Dr. Feelgood too. But the Sonic Temple, incredible album. You fact checking me on that? But is that right?
Let's see here, you are in. No, I'm just totally kidding. No, I was responding to a text.
Oh, okay.
It's my wife.
I didn't know if you were checking on that, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bob Rock with that signature Bob.
Yeah,
Rock
I'm pretty sure.
But the Cult, I'd love to see them live. They're still going strong. Their new stuff is still interesting.
Yeah. As long as you have Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy, man, those two, you've got the Cult, in my opinion.
So what were your 5?
Great choice, by the way, man. On all of these, Van Halen 1984 is probably my outside of Diver Down. Diver Down is by far the worst for me of the first era of Van Halen, the Diamond Dave era. 1984, probably after that. I don't know. I never connected with 1984. For me, it was always Fair Warning and Women and Children First. But I mean, it's still a good record, and definitely that catapulted them into the stratosphere. 1984. I mean, they were already a well-known, popular band at that point, but when that came out, it was over.
Yeah, when they found a whole new audience, they stacked on top of their current audience, stack on top of that a new audience.
Yeah,
and they were just massive.
Yep. All right, real quick here. So my 5 were, again, 1980 Blizzard of Oz. I can't believe we didn't include that on there. I feel like it should have been on there. And then staying in 1980, Diamond Head, Lightning to the Nations. Another band that I can't believe we left off. Probably because I wasn't listening to Diamond Head in the 80s. I didn't find out about them until much later. Probably I didn't find out about them until the end of the 80s, to be honest with you.
Or for me, nobody knew about Diamond Head until they looked at the credits on the Garage Days.
Yeah, the first time I heard "Am I Evil," right? I always thought that was Metallica's song because I loved that song. And then I'm like, oh, Diamond Head, and then I got into them later. So yeah, probably wasn't really until the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s that I started to get into Diamond Head and go back. But yeah, super influential New Wabam band. And then 1981, we talked about Van Halen, Fair Warning. That and like I said, Women and Children First are my two favorite Van Halen, David Lee Roth era Van Halen records. 1982's Maiden's Number of the Beast. That record holds some nostalgia with me, just because it's just one of those records that was my introduction to Maiden. That was obviously the first record that I heard from them. So, and I could have been on there. Like I said, Peace of Mind is a better record in my opinion, but I mean, Number of the Beast is right there. And then finally, my last one, 1988, Metallica's And Justice for All. As much has been said and written about that record. The reissue just came out. This was the first Metallica record that I heard. I have heard of Metallica, but I did not hear Master of Puppets, Red Lightning, Kill 'Em All. This was the record. I remember my buddy had this tape, and it just blew me away. And it's still my favorite Metallica record to this date. So
nice. And I know you got the box. I know you got the box set.
And it's killer, man. Recommended. If you can get it, get it. Sorry about that. My dogs.
Yeah, I got my eye on the Justice box because I ended up getting a good deal on the Puppets box. But
yep.
Justice
highly
for
recommended.
All, love that album. Believe me, I know every note, every riff.
Me too,
and
man.
then I anticipate the timing changes, and then hearing that live when I saw Metallica live, they did a medley, a Justice medley, but they still pulled out and did which I wanted to hear more of Justice live. They did like a medley to kind of put it all together, but I forget which one did they do. It's been a while, but yeah, Justice. When I heard them live, I got to hear what Jason Newsted sounds like. I got to hear what the bass guitar sounds like. I was like, that was pretty cool too. So yeah, great list. Fair Warning. I mean, not a lot of people talk about Fair Warning. I think you're right. It probably is one of the better.
It's heavier. It's heavier than. It's not as heavy as Women and Children, but it's definitely heavier than the other Roth era Van Halen albums. But real quick on the box set on And Justice for All before we wrap up. The best part about that box, and yes, you get the remastered album and it sounds great, but you get the 1989 Seattle live concert. That was, I don't know if you've seen the live shit Binge and Purge. You remember that? Absolutely, VHS from back in the day? That Seattle concert is on, it's a 3 LP vinyl that comes in the box set, so you can actually throw it on your turntable and listen to it. Yeah, it's that right there is worth it.
Like a 25-minute version of Seek and Destroy.
Yeah, dude, it's amazing. It sounds just as good as it sounded watching it on. I still have the VHS box set as well. I don't have a VHS player, so I can't watch it, but
I do. I think the CD ones are harder to find on that, aren't they?
Of the Binge and Purge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the CD version was less common, but yeah, I remember when that came out. It was great.
So that was my 5, and we felt that this was the best way to do it because we'd still be arguing back and forth on top 25. So, well, I guess we've gone on long enough. We can kind of maybe wrap this up. The next episode we'll continue with this theme. We're going to do 1990 to 1999. Same. We'll keep it at top 20 hard rock and metal albums. That'll be awesome. Obviously, the 90s is when we came into our own. We're 90s kids. So that'll be a lot of fun to get into. Any last closing thoughts?
No, if you're still here listening, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening and participating. Comment below if you agree or disagree. What's your top 20 from 1980 to 1989? And hope you enjoyed the discussion. I look forward to doing the next round. It's going to be really awesome and get into some. It'll be interesting to see what makes it now that we've kind of sorted out this process.
Right.
It's really interesting to see between two people what ends up making that what we end up matching up. So looking forward to doing that with you, man. Thanks for having me on again.
Yep, no problem. Me as well. See you, everybody. Have a good week coming up, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, guys, stay heavy.